Hello, everyone. I am Bella Gaitan. My pronouns are she, her. Visual description of myself. I am a light-skinned Latina. We're going to go with blue-green for the color of my hair. It is very short, very curly, and asymmetrical. I'm wearing a black sleeveless pantsuit jumpsuit with a colorful eye necklace. I have a lot of earrings, and I have a large gold piercing in my nose. Behind me, I have a soothing green wall with lots of plants and a few tchotchkes here and there. I want to get started because I do tend to talk a lot during my presentations, because I do, again, like to make it interactive, and I like to, give a lot of examples and such. So we will get started. There will be time at the end for Q&A, but feel free to pop anything in chat. And I don't have chat up where I can see it really well as I'm speaking, but I will pause periodically to go into chat. Noah, if you see anything that you think I need to stop and address, please let me know. But we will go ahead and get rolling here, my friends. So my talk today is inclusive accessibility beyond colors and captions. So a little bit about myself, I'm Bella. I work as a technical instructional designer at Pantheon Platform, which is a web ops tech startup company. I'm also an inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, I have to think those through in my mind as I'm saying them, practitioner consultant for NASA Astrophysics. I'm also a WordPress web developer, a speaker, and a coach. So I'm kind of known for my authenticity, my transparency, and my vulnerability. I like to be able to talk about, I'm going to put taboo in air quotes here because I don't think they should be taboo topics. I'm a huge fan of lived experience, so I like to use my lived experience and my intersectional identities as someone who is Latina, queer, I'm colorblind, I'm neurodivergent, and I'm physically disabled. And I use those experiences to teach folks on, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, accessibility, and disability. Anybody that knows me knows that I love coffees, plants. I said coffees, and I think that's appropriate because I'm drinking it all day. Laughing, and cats. And everyone says I bring the Big Bella energy, so I hold on to that. Before we get started, I do want to toss out just a few little, I'll call them disclaimers. For anyone that's not muted, please mute yourself because sometimes it will give feedback through the mic, and I want everyone to be able to have an equitable experience in this event. I move around a lot, so I hope that doesn't make you, dizzy or anything. If it does, I apologize. It's not my intent. My assistant will be coming in periodically to make sure I'm doing my job. And another thing, I do have neurological and cognitive disabilities. So sometimes I will stumble with my words or might be unable to say something in a way that makes sense to you all, but it does to me. So if I say anything like that, by all means, just say in chat, hey, can you explain that a different way? And I'll do my best to try to go through and explain that. So let's jump in and talk about who benefits from accessibility. So I'd like to go to chat now. And who do you think benefits from accessibility? And I am trying to get my screen up here so I can see chat. Oh my goodness, you are my people. We are family. I love this. Everyone. Okay, thanks for attending my presentation. It's been great. I feel like I can just go, like, I think you all can teach me. That's amazing. I love that so much. So yeah, but we're gonna go through my little dramatic storyline here. So let's start with some people that benefit from accessibility. People with mobility impairments benefit from accessibility, right? Here's one where some of you may be thinking, has she had enough coffee today? LGBTQIA folks benefit from accessibility, and I will get to that later. For folks who are not aware, the acronym stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual. Q can be queer or questioning. I intersects A, asexual, and the plus is for other identities that, for people that may not feel that they fall into those categories. People with visual impairments benefit from accessibility. People who are deaf or hard of hearing benefit from accessibility. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities benefit from accessibility. This is a picture of a superstar that you will see further along in this session, my uncle, who likes to be called DJ Norby because he's super fresh. He has intellectual and developmental disabilities, and he loves it. He gets to be a star here in my presentation. And finally, what all of you knew, everyone benefits from accessibility, right? I think this, I love that everyone's just like, everyone. It's so perfect. So when you think about accessibility, probably the first things that you think of are colors and captions, hence my little, subtitle here for this speech. If you have any type of accessibility training, or you've taken the time to learn as part of your instructional design or learning experience designer journey, you think beyond that and you think, okay, I need to design for people that may have cognitive disabilities, for physical disabilities. Though the physical disability one, I think really needs a lot of work, and we'll go through that in a little bit. Visual disabilities and hearing and speech disabilities. So what the heck is inclusive accessibility? So for me, when I came into accessibility by way of, becoming disabled, I noticed something. There weren't any guidelines on creating a psychologically safe space. Okay. I noticed that when I went into situations where there was imagery, of diverse people, they were typically all within like maybe 20 to 30 years old. They were all of average size. And when I say average, let me again put that in air quotes because that shouldn't be a thing. Or you see people, in wheelchairs with this little sad face. I mean, it gets me going. So I have to tone it down a little bit here. But yeah, like you see these very basic efforts go through, but people are so much more than their abilities and their disabilities, right? So let me introduce you to what I call inclusive accessibility. It's at the center of designing spaces that are accessible in terms of like WCAG and stuff like that, but also providing a safe space for everyone. And I guess I'll stop for a second. Let me look at chat. Do we have any questions so far? And I'm trying to adjust my chat when I go here so I can see more. I don't see anything. I just see all of you wonderful people saying everyone. And I love it. Okay, let's keep rolling. And again, I sincerely mean it. If at any point I don't make sense or you don't understand what I'm saying, just pop it in chat and I will do my best to say it a different way. So let's go through the different categories that I just had in that little visual representation. Let's start with the visual. So what are some of the types of visual disabilities? Well, we have folks that have partial or total vision loss. We have people that have low vision, folks that have color blindness. And you're looking at the next three and thinking, those aren't disabilities. Well, here's the thing. At some point in our life, we are all going to be disabled. As we get older, we're going to become disabled. But we also have things such as temporary or situational disabilities. So I'll give you an example. Someone with dilated eyes after going to the eye doctor, they have a very situational vision impairment for the moment, right? You have people that have really painful eyes. They may have pink eye or any type of allergy or infection in their eye that causes, maybe bright lights are really hurting their eyes. Maybe even just keeping them open, is just really causing them a lot of pain and discomfort while they have that situational disability. And then we have things like light sensitivity. So design considerations when you want to design an inclusive and accessible learning experience for people with visual disabilities. Make sure the colors have enough contrast. I often get asked, Bella, is this an accessible color? Well, colors, there's no such thing as an inaccessible color. It's the color combinations. And you always want to make sure that you have enough contrast. I know I've got some superstars in the audience. I see people that I know, and I'm sure a lot of the folks from the university are also superstars. But if any of you want to toss out links, that would be great. One of the tools that I use often is WebAIM. It's WEB and then AIM. I believe AIM stands for Accessibility in Mind. But yeah, if someone wants to toss out that link, I will love you forever. But they have a free and very simple to use color contrast checker. I know a lot of the different tools. I believe Adobe has one, but I'm not an Adobe user. But if you just Google, free color contrast checker, that's something I recommend to do very early on in the process when you're setting up your templates. You're deciding on your style guide for what you're creating. That way you don't have headaches down the road. So other things that you can do for design consideration is include alt text for images. Alt text is essentially what a screen reader user will hear as they're navigating content and it comes to an image. So for this image, I could say a person who is blind with a white cane sits in a chair. It doesn't have to be elaborate. For most of the folks that I've talked to that use screen readers, they prefer their alt text to be very short, brief, just a very quick, description. When we get to image descriptions, which I'll discuss later, that is something definitely different, and you can be more creative and descriptive in that. But make sure that you allow the users to be able to zoom in to the content that they're consuming. Make sure you're using text instead of images of text. So I'm going to show my age here. How many of you remember back in, it was like the late 90s, early 2000s, when you had all these generators online where you could enter your name and it would like animate it with flames or the bubble letters or something like that? I know some of you have to feel me on this one, right? So those are cool, or they were cool, but we can bring them back. They're still cool. But the problem is with it being an image, unless you add alt text to it, then they're completely missing out on the content, right? Because it's not going to read what the text says unless you manually go in and put it. So not relying on color alone to convey information. By the way, I am colorblind. So I recently had a situation where I enrolled in and we'll call it an educational institution, a private institution, and come to find out they were using icons with colors. And I mean, the icons were tiny, tiny, tiny. And I couldn't see half of them because they didn't have enough color contrast. And so I wasn't able to participate in that content or understand what is that label for, because they didn't also have alt text. So, make sure, like, I know we tend to think of red for stop and green for go. That's fine if you want to do that. But let's say you're using like a circular icon for red and green. Also within the icon or below it, make sure that you have the, red spelled out. You have green spelled out. And not in red or green, do it in white, do it in black or something so that, folks can be able to understand what they're supposed to do with those different prompts. And then make sure that you have clear and concise page titles, link text, headings, and labels. I highly recommend everyone to try using a screen reader at some point and just pick a website and go to it, and you will immediately understand why these are so very important. And finally, visual descriptions in live events. If you notice at the start, I give a visual description of myself. That is there to help anyone who's not able to see me to be able to have more of, I guess we'll call it an equitable experience with the presentation, so that they have an idea of what does she look like? What is she wearing? Also, just want to toss out a reminder there. If you're not on mute, please be sure to mute, just so everybody will be able to to hear my annoying voice throughout this whole presentation. I'm going to stop after each one of these and see if anyone has any questions. Let me get the chat pulled up here. Made some slick logos with these tools. Nice, Noah. Yes, thank you for putting that in there, Noah. Julia is the best. I just went last week to a training by, I think it's called Equalize Digital or Digital Equalize. I'm using NVDA, which is a free screen reader for, I believe it's only for Windows though, but it's really amazing. Kayleen tossed a color contrast checker out there. Awesome. Thank you so much. As well as for the WebAIM. Yes, situational chronic migraine with auras. Yes. Completely. Okay, so we will continue on. This handsome dude right here is my dad, aka my twin. We joke that he could not deny me even if he tried. So this one, we're talking about hearing and speech disabilities. For context, my dad is deaf in one ear, and I was born with a speech impediment and had to go through speech therapy. And I still have to kind of remind myself, or shouldn't say remind myself, but focus on what I've learned sometimes, because I will mess up some of the words that I say because of that. So what are some of the types of hearing and speech disabilities? So as I said with my dad, deaf or hard of hearing.
Okay. I love you.
Hi, can we make sure that everyone's muted, please? Only because my ADHD will really throw me off and I already ramble enough. Thank you so much. So we're talking about people that are deaf or hard of hearing, people that have issues with stuttering or stammering, people with speech sound disorders. And then we get into the situational and temporary. We're talking about maybe someone has throat cancer. Maybe someone has strep throat or an ear infection or, vertigo, dizziness that might somehow, affect their hearing and such as well. So when you're thinking about how to design for people that have hearing and speech disabilities, make sure that you're having different communication options for people. So as an example, let's say that I am, let me think of something here, different communication options. Well, if you're requiring people to, okay, good example, Duolingo. If you do Duolingo, the language learning app, there's certain exercises where you can speak and be able to be rated on your ability to speak, the words in the language that you're learning. Duolingo has done an amazing thing. They have a button there that says, I cannot speak at this time. And while that is a situational thing, maybe you're on the bus or you're on the train or you're in the office and you don't want people to hear you, that is also beneficial for folks that may not be able to speak or may need additional time or may have difficulties pronouncing certain letters. So that's, one way to be able to do that. Instead of having to speak, you're also able to, maybe type in your responses. Make sure that you provide captions on video and audio. I think most people are pretty good about this. And luckily, with the rise of AI and the improvements that are being made in that field, we have so many different tools and technologies out there that are able to really help out so much with like automatic captioning. Just keep in mind that automatic captioning is never 100% correct. One way to be able to get captions like for your videos and content is to create a YouTube channel, upload it to YouTube. You can mark it as, I think it's called private, where nobody can see, get it to generate the captions. And then you can kind of go in there and just be like, oh, I didn't say this, I said this, and move things around. And it's free. And it's a really helpful way to get captions. So kind of going along with allowing different communication options, make sure that you're allowing extra time in communication. If someone has an issue with stuttering or stammering and you're telling them, okay, you have to give a 200-word speech in, I have no idea how long that would take, let's say 5 minutes. That might be a big barrier for them if it's going to take them longer to be able to do something like that. So allow extra time. or revert back to number one and just allow different options in terms of communication methods. And then finally, don't assume that all deaf or hard of hearing folks know sign language. Many of them do not. One of my friends, a superstar in accessibility, Meryl Evans, she is deaf and she lip reads. So if you're going into an event and you're thinking, okay, we'll make sure we have captions on, well, that would be great for people that lip read, but for people who, may prefer sign language, you can have both. So let's see. I apologize, I keep rubbing my face. My cat is sitting here as my assistant and getting hairs all over me. So I will pause here and see if anyone has any questions. I don't know why I'm struggling to find the chat every time. It's like this window is just hiding from me. Okay, don't see any questions. I'm trying to keep an eye on time as well, so I can make sure we have time for questions at the end. So let's move forward and talk about physical disabilities. So types of physical disabilities could be things like multiple sclerosis, partial or full paralysis, arthritis, connective tissue disorders. And then when we're talking about situational and temporary, someone could have a broken bone or could have like a recent surgery or such. So when you're thinking about the design considerations for people with physical disabilities, don't rely solely on mouse input, because if someone doesn't use a mouse and you've not set up, alternate input methods, how are they going to access the content, right? Also, this second one is one that I talk so much about, and I really wish that it would make its way into more of the mainstream accessibility guidelines. Avoid excessive scrolling and navigational clicks. I should say avoid creating a situation where people have to scroll and navigational clicks. So as an example, I get really frustrated on LinkedIn a lot when I see that there's posts that have one line like, hey, I gotta come clean. Enter, 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 enter. Yesterday, I did something amazing. Emoji of like a wow, face. Enter, enter, enter. Do you want to know what it is? Things like that. I know people are doing it because it's like foreshadowing. It gives that anticipation, like, oh my gosh, I have to know. But using myself as an example, it terrorizes my hands. I have a rare connective tissue disorder. It's a genetic tissue disorder where all of my collagen is too loose. So if you imagine collagen in your connective tissues, it's throughout your whole body. It encases your organs. We're talking nerves, vessels, all your joints and stuff like that. So the more that I have to like scroll or click, 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 I have a very limited amount of energy in my hands during the day. And so when I'm trying to go through and read that content, a lot of times I have to stop and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get down to what I want to do because I have to keep scrolling and I'm going to end up in pain. And also think about people that, maybe, nope, I just lost my whole train of thought there. So that's my ADHD there. So we'll move on with that. But also ensure that content is viewable on various device layouts. Not everybody is going to be sitting at a computer like I am. Somebody could be on a tablet. Somebody could be using their phone. And then you have to think also for people who may not have movement in their hands or have very little movement, how are they accessing the content, right? I'll give you an example that I think is really cute. My uncle was paralyzed from the neck down. He had very limited use in his hands, but he loved to smoke. So we had to, his family had to get like a fork and they taped it to his hand and had the tines like separated so that he had just enough mobility where he could kind of go like that to be able to smoke, right? So he had to adapt, to being able to do that. One of the things you want to think about is we really shouldn't make learners have to adapt to be able to have an equal opportunity in, consuming the content that we're creating, right? We should have it already there for them so that they don't have any additional barriers. And then finally, offer multiple methods for interacting with content. Such as, okay, let me give an example of this presentation. It's going out by video, okay? Well, for folks that have vision disabilities or just simply not able to see the presentation right now, they're able to hear my voice. For folks that are not able to hear my voice, they will be able to access a transcript, right? So we're having, different ways that people can interact, and be able to be a part of this. So I will stop here and see if anyone has questions. I see so many people in the chat that I know, and I'm just like, I'm so happy. So yeah, shout out to like Devin, Simone, Kathleen, and everybody, and all these other beautiful people that I'm so happy to meet today. What is my thinking? Michael says, what is your thinking about making hyperlinks open in new Windows tabs? That's a good one. So disclaimer, I am by no means an accessibility expert. I am an advocate for accessibility. I am learning to be an accessibility expert. Michael, if you don't mind, ask if you can let me know if you're thinking of an accessibility standpoint or more of like a, just what's my personal opinion on them. And as you're typing that out, if you're able to, I'll kind of continue on that. So personally, I don't like for things to open in different windows or tabs. Unless it's something that is moving away from the existing website. So an example, if you're reading like a blog post of mine on my website and I'm linking to something on LinkedIn, I will make that open in a different tab, because if it doesn't open another tab, and I guess so Michael wrote back accessibility. So I guess also if you think about it, if it doesn't open up in an additional tab, you're going to this new screen, and then how do you get back to the other one? You have to go back. Well, what if you still want to see that information that was, could have opened in another tab? You have to go back. You have to right click it. You have to choose, open a new tab. I would imagine that is probably very frustrating for someone that uses a screen reader or assistive technology. But I would love, like anybody else in the chat, please, like if in terms of accessibility, if there are any guidelines about hyperlinks opening in new windows or tabs. Let's see. Sarah says, this might be a question for later on, but how does one accommodate what seems like opposing needs, like breaking up material into smaller pieces over more pages versus minimizing clicks and scrolls? That is a great question, Sarah. And that's something I've discussed at length on LinkedIn with various people, because while I don't like when I have to, when there's like 4 or 5, enter returns, between content, I also don't want to have a LinkedIn post that uses all, 2,000 characters. That is one wall of text, right? So I feel like there is there's a happy medium there. There's a, if something should really stand out, fine, like put it on one line, but enter once, go down and kind of continue. So yeah, but you do get a lot of other people that say, you know what, I prefer for stuff to be one line, like one sentence per line, and go down. Nothing is ever going to be 100% accessible. Oh, Michael, interesting. Accessibility guidelines discourage opening in new tabs in Windows. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole looking into that today so I can better understand why. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I forget what I was saying, but I see Kayleen. Awesome. Kayleen provided a link to an article on codersblock.com. Here's an informative blog post about the issue of opening links in new tabs. I didn't realize that W3C advises against it. Yeah, thank you for that, Kayleen. And Michael, I'm definitely going to be researching that today, because I would have thought it would have been the other way around. that they would encourage them. But yeah, I will definitely look into that. Awesome. Looking at the time, I'm going to continue on a little bit more, and then I'll come back in for questions. Thank you so much for everyone participating, by the way. I always love when people have questions, and everyone in the audience is so helpful. I'm all about community, so I love that. All right, so let's move on. We have, again, the superstar, the one and only DJ Norby, my uncle. So now we're talking about cognitive disabilities. What are different types of cognitive disabilities? So you have intellectual disabilities. You have neurodivergence, which is, things like ADHD, autism, and also things like personality disorders. You have dyslexia and dyscalculia. You have memory loss, which may not technically be a disability, but it's just something that you're struggling with for whatever reason. And then with, situational and temporary, you may have a concussion, or you may suffer from migraines and have severe headaches. For myself, I am neurodivergent. I have ADHD. I likely have autism, just have not sought a diagnosis yet. And I have borderline personality disorder. I also have severe headaches, and I do have cognitive difficulties. There we go. Cognitive difficulties due to, I have a lot of lesions in my brain and neurological disabilities. So when you're thinking about someone with cognitive disabilities, design considerations are image descriptions. Now, I touched on this earlier when I talked about alt text. So as a recap, alt text for this could be, it's a photo of DJ Norby in vibrant clothing, smiling, just something very simple, right? Image description is going to be something that you include in your post, or you can think of an image description as a caption, right? So an image description of this would be DJ Norby is a tan, Mexican with a rose bucket hat that has Selena on it, and a blue shirt with lettering. He's wearing his many necklaces that he always does. He's sitting on a couch with a refrigerator behind him and a stack of his hats. So the image description goes into a lot more detail, right? And here's the thing. Image descriptions aren't necessarily only for people that have vision disabilities, right? You might be thinking, well, why would I put an image description when I've already added alt text? Here's the thing. I'm colorblind. I may not know that those are red roses on DJ Norby's hat, right? So by adding an image description, you can accommodate and include people who do have vision disabilities and impairments, but they do not use a screen reader, okay? But in the terms of when we're talking about cognitive disabilities, think about, I like to use myself and people that I know as an example, as you're seeing here, because again, it's really important to listen to people that have lived experience with disabilities. So with my ADHD and my neurodivergence, sometimes I might not understand, well, why is this picture posted here? Does this somehow connect? And so also being able to provide context in an image description really helps. I sometimes don't get sarcasm unless I know that it's from a certain TV show or something like that, right? So it really helps to be able to add in something like, this picture represents, or, also emotions for people that may struggle with reading emotions and, kind of like social cues from their face. So I would say that DJ Norby is smiling very happily, so that you wouldn't think that maybe he's crying, because if you look at his eyes, he has them very small. His face, he's not showing teeth. That's a family thing, by the way. We just don't show teeth when we smile. And, his eyes look a little bit watery. So you might think, oh, he might be crying about something. Like, why would she have that up there, right? So image descriptions help so many different folks. The one thing you want to make sure not to do, please don't do this, is add hashtags or think of image descriptions as a really great place for search engine optimization and keywords, right? Please don't do that. So another thing, I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to try to get through all this stuff. I'm almost done, friends, I promise. Using clear and concise language. So saying something like, that's a piece of cake. Well, what do you mean it's a piece of cake, right? And that's kind of going along with like using slang and jargon, but don't try to make stuff so wordy that it reads like a thesis, right? Be very conversational, be very casual. Don't put a bunch of fluff in there. That's what I call it. The extra crap that just, makes you feel like, oh, I've said it in this grand way, right? Just be very straight, be very like to the point. Grammarly is wonderful to help with that. I use the free version all the time. AI is really helpful with that. I've not messed around with a lot, but I have, I use ChatGPT a lot. When I say stuff and I'll tell it, does this need to be rewritten for clearness and conciseness and clarity? And it just does such a fantastic job, and often like takes my sentences down by like half in terms of size and still carries that same meaning. It just takes out a lot of my fluffy words. So I definitely recommend trying something like that. Avoiding cognitive overload. I'll give another example. I attended a presentation, and it was I forget what the topic was, but when I got on, the person had an aquarium behind them that was very active, like a huge aquarium spanning most of the background. And there's fishes, just going everywhere, which is beautiful, right? And I could also hear the bubbling. But then as the person started to present, they also kept bringing in music. And they had a frame somehow. I don't even know how they did this magic. They had a frame in Zoom that was space. So, and it was twirling. So I'm trying to pay attention to listen to this person. I'm looking at the fish. I'm hearing the bubbles. I'm hearing the music. I'm hearing this person speak, and then also feeling like I'm lost in space, right? So that's definitely cognitive overload that is not needed. Try to avoid that. Provide context when it's not clear. Again, I kind of touched on this with image descriptions. Be able to say like, why is this included? I introduced it and I said, well, this is DJ Norby. He has, intellectual and developmental disabilities, but just let people know, because some people may be looking at the image and they just feel like they're lost and have no idea why this is with the content. And then be engaging without being busy. Again, that's kind of down to the example I gave with the cognitive overload. That person they were beyond busy. That was just a whole nother universe that I was in for the 15 minutes that I could tolerate it before I had to leave. So I'm going to check chat for a second here. And if I say anyone's name wrong, I apologize, but I do my best. Anetta, if you are doing an image description, is there a particular side or direction to begin and end with? I'm not sure I understand the question. If you can word it differently in terms of like the side or direction, and I'll get back to that. Eunice says, how much alt text and image descriptions are similar to each other? Can I say alt text is a brief intro of the image and image descriptions provides more details? Yeah, so for alt text, it's just the very most basic thing that you can say, because 9 times out of 10, the images are just decorative. You could mark it as decorative according to I think it's WCAG guidelines. I typically like to add just a little something in there because I feel like everybody else is able to see that image. I want people that are using screen readers to be able to have that opportunity as well. And then, yeah, definitely for image description, it provides more details for people in addition to folks that have visual disabilities and impairments. Noah says, SEO has ruined the internet and with it accessibility. Yes, yes. Peter says, great point about sarcasm. My wife is from Chile and US type sarcasm is really hard for her. I hadn't thought of that as an accessibility thing, but saying the opposite of what you mean is probably not clear and concise at all. Best to avoid sarcasm in our designs. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of sarcasm, and I try not to use it often in like a professional setting. And when I do, I immediately follow up by something like, oh, just kidding. Or can you tell that I really didn't mean that, Aneta, I don't know if it's Aneta or Anita. Are there guidelines for describing image descriptions, where to start? I don't believe back me up here, people. I don't believe there's any guidelines for image descriptions. I don't even know that image descriptions are part of like WCAG and accessibility guidelines. It's just it's a good practice to do. And it's something that I've seen from every person that I know that is either blind or like fully blind or partially blind. They talk about like, please include image descriptions. Let's see. Ooh, perfect. Thank you so much. I always want to know how to pronounce your name, so I need you to send me a message on LinkedIn. I always want to say like Taina, and I don't know if that's right, but I love it. Anyhow, I try to say
it pretty close.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yep.
I try to say everything in Spanish if I don't know how to say it. So awesome. Thank you so much. And Kayleen for tossing that out here. Okay, let's get through. So here is the final part of this. Inclusive accessibility, the part in the middle in the circle. So here's where I like to bring up the groups that are often left out of accessibility. So we have LGBTQIA plus individuals that are left out. Going on the comment about your wife being from Chile, immigrants and non-native speakers, they are often left out of accessibility. Those with mental health disorders. Although neurodivergence is starting to get a lot more momentum, I should say, in accessibility, the same, I guess the same passion typically isn't there for people who may have like a personality disorder like I have, or may have, obsessive compulsive disorder, or, depression, major anxiety, stuff like that. And then neurodivergent folks. I know we've already talked about that, but again, I think there's still a lot more that could be done in terms of accessibility for neurodivergent folks. People of color, we often see them left out of accessibility. A lot of times if you search for an image and you put disabled, person in wheelchair or something, you're mostly going to get white folks that pull up. So a lot of times we just don't see a lot of representation because people just aren't doing that. Folks wearing religious clothing. We need to see more of people like a woman wearing hijab or someone wearing any type of like religious garment. Is it the yarmulke? I think it's called for Jewish men. But things like that, you don't often see that represented in, content that you see. Elderly, again, and plus size folks. I'm fat. And when I go into somewhere, I want to see that there are fat folks represented in the content. I want to see that maybe there's a Latina, a Mexican, or, someone, I want to see folks of color. I want to see queer folks. I want to see, everyone. And that's the problem. A lot of times, and I'll give this to you all as an assignment if you'd like, go to a site like unsplash.com or pixels.com, which are free stock photo sites. And for your prompt, your search prompt, I want you to say diverse people or diverse office or something like that. And I promise you, most of the stuff that you get back, they are only going to be diverse in skin tone. You will have, like I said earlier in the conversation, you will have people that tend to be within the 20s and 30s. They're at a bar, they're having a good time. They may have one person in a wheelchair. They're all, either thin or let's say non-plus size, because I don't like the whole normal average size thing. You'll never see old folks hardly. And I can tell you this from experience because I have tried so hard to find pictures that have someone who's plus size, someone who's above 70, someone that is, visual, that you can see that they are disabled. And it's so hard, friends. It's so hard. So they're often left out. So when we're thinking about accessibility and also adding in that inclusion to our accessibility, use inclusive photos beyond skin color, avoid triggering language. So I'm not going to give examples here, but we do have some phrases in the English language that have violent words in them, and we use them like slang about like, I can't even think of a topic, but again, I'm not going to say them because they can be triggering. There's a lot of resources out there. I know Heidi Kirby of Useful Stuff. I helped her and Matt Smith write an article. Reach out to me, and I'm happy to give like a bunch of resources. I will also be adding this presentation to my website with additional resources. So just reach out to me on any of the social platforms, and I'm happy to send that stuff forward. Use gender neutral language, policeman, mailman, hair lady, stuff like that. Make sure that you're using police person or a police officer, the male person, and just not assuming that if someone says like an engineer, oh, what's his name? Well, actually, her name is Amanda. Try to a lot of that is like embedded in our mind, right? Because we grow up with this ableism, and also like these notions that an engineer typically means it's a guy, a nurse typically means it's a woman. Try to avoid using language like that so that you can be inclusive to everybody. Avoid slang and jargon, use a clear writing style, provide context for images and stories. Storytelling is really popular. I love it, except I do not love that people seem to be turning everything into a story when it doesn't need to be. If you're telling a story, somehow at the end, try to explain how that story relates to the point that you're trying to make, because some people will not get it. And I'm one of those people often, and it's a very frustrating, and you feel excluded, and then explain acronyms, abbreviations, and terms that may not be known by all. If you noticed, whenever we came across any type of abbreviations, I tried to, spell them out. And finally, what I've been speaking about throughout this as well about lived experience. Please, please, please listen to people that have lived experience. Okay. And I'll give you an example. Like, you may know something from WCAG or the different like accessibility guidelines, and that's great. But if you hear people with lived experience saying, hey, this does not work for me, I have troubles with this, I've heard other people, like, listen to them, learn from them, try to figure out if there's a way that you can, still be, accessibility compliant, but also trying to also, accommodate as many people as you can, right? So I love this photo. I'm in there. I promise you can't see me. I'm way in the back, but this is a conference, a global conference I attended a few years back for one of the rare diseases that I have, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I put this in there because never before have I ever been surrounded by so many people who knew more about my disease than most of my doctors, because we live it. And, medical providers, they learn it from books, they learn it during their clinicals, but they don't feel it. They don't live it day in and day out. So when we're talking about accessibility, as well as extending this to diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging, social justice, like, listen to the people that have lived experience, please, please, please. And with that, my friends, I'm done. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Your homework, and only if you're a nerd like me and it sounds fun, just contact me on any platform that you like. I have my contact information on the next screen. And just let me know how you plan to incorporate inclusive accessibility from now on. Ask me any questions, anything at all. I always close everything up with, much love, be a good human, and don't be a stranger. I would love to connect. So I'm going to keep this screen up. Actually, I'm going to take, if anyone wants to screenshot that, you can. But But yeah, contact me anywhere, connect with me. Always happy to connect with folks. Let me I'm going to stop sharing so I can pull up the chat with you fantastic people. I think I've stopped sharing, haven't I?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Ahmed, you said like break a leg. Yeah, shooting from the hip. Yeah, those are some of those triggering things that could really bother people. I see Kayleen said lots of ableist language in English related to mental health. Yes. One of the things that really gets me is when people have a day that they're feeling a little bit frazzled or a little bit kind of all over the place. Oh my gosh, I'm so ADHD today. No, you're not. You are not ADHD just because you're having trouble focusing on something at the moment, unless you have been diagnosed with ADHD. We see this happening with OCD a lot, and I hate it so much when people are like, oh, I'm so OCD. I have to have my address book right here. Okay. No, you're not OCD unless you have that diagnosis. You just prefer to have something organized, right? Let me go through here. Yeah, man, you're killing it. Yeah, great examples. Yeah, Ahmed says, as a speaker of English as a third language, these expressions always puzzle me. Yeah, so I am Mexican. So growing up, like I've heard a lot of those different stories as well, and the different, phrases and stuff like that. And I've always had friends like all over the world. And so I've had to teach myself how to talk without using a lot of those slang. So I'm scrolling through the messages here now because we do have a few more minutes. All the thank yous. Thank you so much. Thank you, Devin, for loving my new hair color. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Happy to stick around for however long as needed. You can just come off mute or raise your hand or something. If you have any questions, you can type it in the chat as well if you're not comfortable speaking or being on camera.